This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
Okay, so that's not Josh, as you can tell. Everybody, Bug is back here doing a podcast with me today instead of Josh, because there's been some pretty big, important stuff that's gone on that she's dealt with regarding autism, and I just wanted to have her back and to describe what happened, what she's been through, and what she's accomplished. So, before we say anything else, I just want to say, she kicked butt and didn't take no for an answer, wasn't to be stopped, didn't just kind of shrink away when principals and vice principals and guidance counselors and teachers just said, it's not necessary, this special support is not necessary, and really basically, people just didn't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
You wouldn't stop, and you kept going, and you really got someplace, and thankfully something happened that really opened things up to make a difference. So that's, I give kudos to the school itself. But, so, to set it up, we're going to talk today about the 504 that you got in place for Connor. So, to anybody that's listening, this is going to be a lot of detailed stuff today. Some emotion, but it's not like it usually is with me and Josh. It's a lot of details. It's a lot of heartache from you. Like, you're going to share the information, but boy, did you go through every emotion, to get through this. But at 504, now the difference is that when Josh was Connor's age, he's 7 now, Connor's 7, that, I never even heard of a 504. And Josh wasn't diagnosed till he was 7.
Right.
And so we had gone up to this point without anything. And then back then I'm hearing about autism, and I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to make of it. And it's kind of crazy because then I was told what he had, then I would go out and try to convey that to people, and they didn't know about it, and so they thought that I was just a mom making up excuses for their kid.
Right.
I'm so grateful that there are people now that understand autism, and by the time our little dude Connor is 7 years old, there are people that understand what he needs, how he learns, how he processes.
There are abundant resources. You can find resources anywhere. You just have to keep digging. Mm-hmm. Just keep digging.
So I'll just say this, and then I'm gonna send it off to you. But the thing that I worked with when Josh was first diagnosed, and then we took it into the school, was an IEP. So I had never heard of a 504.
Right.
It was an IEP. And from my understanding, we would all meet, we would all go over his plan. It would be, this is what you're entitled to, kind of. But it is a very confusing time because there are a lot of people with autism that are not learning disabled.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, your brother was in gifted programs, didn't need learning support the way that some people do,
right,
in that they need help in, grasping information, tutoring, things like that. He had a very, very difficult time in processing and doing something like test taking in a classroom, where every other sound and noise and even the pencil on the paper would distract him, and it would be complicated. Also, does Connor have a hard time with things that are timed?
Yes, he runs out of time often. He doesn't complete things, but frankly, he has severe ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I can attribute a lot of that to that. Because he gets distracted, and he'll eventually come back to it, or he won't.
Right.
But, you know.
Right, right.
Excuse me.
So, anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. So everybody, just like to give you a heads up, we're going to be talking about the 504. And you know about it because you have been fighting for them to comply.
Sure.
So take it away.
Okay. So initially, I was trying to get him an IEP, because that's what I grew up with Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, they decided that he's not eligible for an IEP, but he qualifies for a 504. I don't know if I need to fight that battle still. I'm watching and kind of waiting.
So, brief interruption here. Whenever Bug says Buddy, that is what she calls her brother Josh.
Oh.
So Buddy is Josh.
Buddy's Josh.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I was very frustrated because Connor, whenever they started doing all of these evaluations, they pushed him off. They would reschedule the appointment, and it would be a month later.
Who?
The school.
Okay.
So we would have these appointments scheduled for an IEP 504 evaluation, and they would push it off. It wouldn't happen. And then finally, they said that you have to be evaluated for like 3 months. That's what I was told. Well, found out that's absolutely not true. It's 30 days. So I was lied to out the gate. But across all of these meetings that eventually did take place, they told me, oh, look, his scores, he is meeting his benchmark or just below it. Well, I'm sorry, yes, he is, but he just repeated kindergarten, and he's at the end of kindergarten. Of course he's meeting, but hello, it's his second time, and he's not meeting all of them.
Right.
That should be an indicator to you.
I don't know if this is an easy answer or not.
Okay.
What is the difference in an IEP and a 504, or is it just not a simple answer?
No, it's pretty cut and dry. So, an IEP talks about you pretty much hit it on the head when you were talking about Buddy with the, back then you had IEPs. That it stands for an individual education plan. Mm-hmm. So basically, they're 100% focused on getting him special education.
Adaptations.
Yes, but it is solely education.
Okay.
Whenever you talk about a 504, that is going to be more geared towards accommodations. So whenever we were talking about these, it's called a Section 504 accommodation plan.
Okay.
So basically, okay, so my little dude has a hard time with this. Can we get him something that, a modification that will help him alleviate that problem so he can focus on what he's supposed to focus on? So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead and then we'll come right back because we're going to talk about this later. Mm-hmm. But like, for example, he has to sit in close proximity to the teacher, but it's also critical that the people who are sitting near him don't have behavioral problems, don't have a hard time getting distracted. Basically, he needs to sit with good peer mentors, basically.
Right. Okay, got it.
Or he's going to see those behaviors, he's going to act the exact same way, and it's almost like he can't help himself.
I used to be like, yes, I know what you're talking about, because every time Nana and I would get together, it was like that. We couldn't behave ourselves. Yes, I understand. So you're not putting the responsibility on the child that's sitting next to him. It's just about mimicking that behavior. So you put somebody next to him that doesn't have ADHD, is able to pay attention, is typically a rule follower,
Right.
and yet that child doesn't even know what they're doing.
No.
They're not assigned something. That responsibility is not put on them.
No. So it doesn't affect any of the other kids. Basically what it's doing is, okay, so like you said, if you were to go to a seminar and you really needed to pay attention, should you sit next to your mom or your husband?
Probably daddy.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Well, but you know why? Because there's always these little kind of things. Like, she'll dig in her purse. She'll bring out, one of those, like, it's true. Like, what they say, it's like gross. She'd bring out a lifesaver, and it would have stuff on it. She would offer me that. Then we start giggling, and then,
Yes.
So, so.
But it's a simple modification that doesn't, it takes no extra work. It doesn't harm anyone, and it just benefits him.
Right. And I appreciate that another child is not given that responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
They're just being who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's not like a punishment for these kids. It's not like they're, being told, hey, you need to keep him in line.
Yes.
They don't even know.
Right.
They don't even know that that's what's happening. So they're rearranging his seating, and they're making that happen. So, but that's pretty much the difference. So it's accommodations for the 504 versus special education for the IEP.
Okay. I feel that Josh was in an excellent school, in an excellent school district. And some of the things, and the reason I was a bit confused by it is because this is something, I'll describe a couple things that they did for him that make me think that this is a 504 in today's guidelines.
Right.
They would give him an opportunity to take tests outside of class. They would give him opportunity to take a test verbally rather than written on books.
Yes, that could be considered a 504, but that's education.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is absolutely an IEP.
I see what you're saying. So what you're talking about is, one is just absolutely everything to do with education. The other is, how does this little dude operate? How does he function? And what does he need around him or to not have around him in order to be successful at school?
Ultimately, it's school, so all of it is education. However, the 504 isn't focused on keeping it's not making modifications for the education. It's like you said, for the test taking, that it's not making modifications completely focused on education. It's making modifications so that he is okay enough to pay attention.
Right.
He's okay enough to be involved in his education.
What I love about this is that it sounds like, because I'm all about the whole being, right?
Right.
Mind, body, and spirit, right? That's like, to me, the way to operate, the way to create and observe and move through life. And it sounds like, I doubt they would say that when, the people that came up with that, but it really sounds like they're taking into consideration his whole being, not just do it how we said to do it.
Right. Yeah. The one thing that I want to make very clear, a huge difference in an IEP versus a 504. A 504 is a legally binding document.
Kaboom!
If the school does not adhere to your 504, and document. All you have to say is you are not adhering to the 504 on these guidelines. My next step is to get an attorney. There are patient advocates, and it's all about patient rights. So my son would be their patient. It's a client, patient, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be called different things, different places. But if he's not given his legal rights, and the school refuses to comply, it can go as far as the school will have to pay to send your child to a different school district that will give him what he needs. And that might mean transportation. That might mean, it's a private school. They're paying for his tuition. Whatever it may be. If they refuse to comply, not only do they pull your child's records, they pull every single 504 in the school. And they do an investigation on every single student. And as soon as you say you're not following these guidelines, they're going to get their butts in gear because they do not want that battle.
Well, that sounds easy enough where, you have the force behind you here, but it's not an easy thing to implement and to express and to have a conversation about when you come up against school personnel that are just not cooperating.
Right.
And so that was a big problem here.
Right.
That's what you were up against. And I'll just say flat out, what happened, you were getting nowhere. So you started documenting everything. You started keeping track. They are the ones, and I think we did a podcast about that and how frustrating that was with particular administration with the school at the time. Well, it seemed like no matter what, we were not getting anywhere. What did happen is they just had a big turnover at the school. Everybody from the principal, vice principal,
and the guidance
counselor and teacher.
Yeah, and the teacher changed.
All changed. Now
I don't know that so much the teacher was a big problem because I actually truly genuinely like her.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't have the backing, she can't be successful. So there are things that I wish she would have done differently, hands down. But if there's no one supporting what I'm requesting, why would she do it? And would she know where to start? You know what I mean?
And this is not just because you and I are both aware that teaching is a hard job.
Oh yeah, I could never do it. That's not me.
It's a hard job. The responsibilities are huge.
I have so much respect for them.
Yeah, me too. They get pulled in so many different directions, and what I want to, something that I want to make clear on this, is that you can't say that just because of circumstances that things are difficult in the school setting, because this other group, this other administration came in, same school, same students, same 504 initially, and the difference is that Connor matters to them.
Right.
And it's just it's a difficult thing to say and to think about, but I always say this to your brother. So what do they call the doctor that graduated bottom of their class?
A doctor.
A doctor, exactly. And not everybody is as good at doing their job, or do they have the heart for it as the next person.
Right.
And there are
That's
a lot
with any career, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. There are schools all across this country that have some of both. I mean, there's schools that, oh my gosh, you want to avoid that because now there's we're not talking about the dangers of schools and how, that's something entirely separate. I'm talking about how a child with autism going to school can be successful there, but they do need some of the supports that you're talking about.
Right.
And there are schools, that some of them, that it's a pain in the rear end and they're not going to do it.
Right.
And then they're where you are right now, this year, where they're embracing what you are sharing with them, appalled by what's happened in the last couple of years, and have instantly made changes.
At first, whenever so Connor needs consistency. He has a hard time with change. So whenever his teacher changed a month into school with no notice, at first I was like, oh my goodness, why would they do this?
Yeah.
Turns out she is the best teacher for him that he has had, and the other ones have been great.
Yeah.
I've really respected them and enjoyed them as individuals. But she just, the way she does things, the way that she sees him and hears him and cares for him is just unbelievable. So I had my parent-teacher conference with her the same day that we had this 504 review. So that was on a Thursday, so a few days ago, and she said, I've only had him in class for 11 days, but this is what I see. And we were able to partner together. And she said, these are a couple things that I need you to help me with. And I have already started digging so that I can partner with you and we can get this 504 rolling. And that just means everything to me.
Yeah.
But I go into this and I'm thinking, okay, a new teacher, I need to tell you a little bit about Connor so you know tips and tricks for him specifically, because there's phrases that help him to like pull back.
Right.
And like, you're going to be able to use this phrase to get his attention and to be able to get him where you need him to be so that the class is successful. Because if one is struggling, that pulls you away from the class.
Sure.
And in that conversation, I mentioned that the 504 was unclear and inaccurate. Well, next thing I know, the assistant principal is calling me and saying, well, I heard that your 504 was not right.
The new vice principal.
Yes, the new vice principal. Let's set up a 504 revision, and we can work on this together. So it's a brand new team, new principal, new vice principal, new guidance counselor, and even his 504 advocate. What's her title actually? Central Office Representative 504. So it's someone from the district. He got a new 504 representative. She has some freaking moxie. I like her. Oh my gosh. And she cares so much. But this whole brand new team, whenever I was talking to the teacher, I was like, okay, I just need you to know, because I didn't realize that all of this had shifted. I didn't expect it to be so open. Mm-hmm. So whenever the assistant principal called me, I'm a little bit like guarded because it's been so challenging. So I even mentioned, I had a meeting with a patient advocate because my 504 is not being adhered to. So I mentioned it. Mm-hmm. And at first, I was thinking, okay, we're going to see some change because I dropped the bomb. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't want to hear that.
Right.
And I could hear, like, panic in her voice. But instead of this change being because I dropped the bomb, I don't think that's what it is. I think these women care. Mm-hmm. And they want to see him successful. And that's what, it just makes such a difference. But if your school, to everyone who's listening, if your school just has so much pushback, drop the bomb. Seriously, drop the bomb. Connor was referred to a neurologist, and the neurologist assigned him a patient rights advocate. And if I needed to, then they would be in that school and the school would be paying for it. Thankfully, we didn't have to go that route. But if you have to do it, then do it, because your child matters. And their rights matter.
And if they're in a school where they're not seen,
Yeah.
and they're not heard, maybe sometimes it is the best step is to get them into a different school.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was our next step. We were talking about moving back to Pennsylvania so we could go to Buddy's old school, my old school, because it was so good. Like, I was ready to go states away.
Yeah, right.
Because it's so important.
Right. And when you say us, it's like we move as a tribe for some reason. I know
For
most
some
families.
reason.
I know a lot of families don't do that, but we do that. It's funny wherever we go, we always end up, we travel as a gang.
We don't all live in the same house, but we will sell all of the houses and we will go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. To help the babies get into a school where they're valued.
I'm glad we don't have to do that.
Yeah, me too.
It's cold up there.
Yeah. Do you have things that you want to share about what's different in the 504 but now versus before?
Yeah, so something else that I really wanted to touch on today was the importance in the verbiage in your 504. So I have a few examples of what was in there and what we changed it to, and I'll kind of, just hearing it, you're going to be able to see like what a difference that makes. For example, in the original 504, we had, in one spot there was established breaks, and in another spot it said movement breaks with a task to complete. Except now,
that was the old one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now it specifically says scheduled breaks for movement during classroom instruction. Connor benefits from having a specific task to complete, such as running an errand, sharpening pencils, etc. So it gives a specific thing to say, this is why we're putting this in here, and this is what you should be doing. The reason it's so important is because whenever he is just like, Buddy doesn't like the phrase shutting down because that's not what it is, but that is a common phrase that you hear. So saying that, you probably know what I'm talking about.
It's just getting overloaded.
Yeah. So whenever he gets to that point, removing him from what he's doing, physically getting up, putting your feet on the floor, physically touching something, removes him from the energy that is stuck to him, his gunk, whatever it may be. It removes him from that situation, gives him something to do, and whenever he comes back, he's able to collect himself.
And he's able to focus.
Yes. So that verbiage, it's a simple little tweak, but it's everything.
You're right.
It's everything.
Well, because one is vague, and the other one gives examples.
Yes.
Or suggestions.
Yes. So
it also narrows down why.
Yes. Okay, so not all of them say specifically why, but not all of them need a specific why. So, let's see, advance notice of transitions, and then in parentheses, 5 minutes is ideal. Well, we know a lot of these kids have a hard time with change. So transition is really important. So advance notice of transitions, 5 minutes is ideal. You don't have to say why. You know why. This little dude needs to be told, okay guys, 5-minute warning, we're going to be going to do this. And then along with that one, it's not in the same bullet, but we also added, let me see where
it was a schedule.
Yes.
For the day.
Visual schedule for Connor to include movement breaks. So a visual schedule for Connor to include movement breaks. And the reason we put movement breaks is his teacher suggested she has a schedule that is up on the wall in her room, and it has, okay, this is what's happening next. Well, now it's Connor's job. Whenever we're about to change it to a new task, he physically gets up from his seat and moves a magnet to the next task.
Oh, that's really cool.
So it's his classroom job.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets to feel excited that he has a job.
Yeah.
He gets to physically get out of his seat. He gets to have his hands on something. It makes him feel important. And it lets him know exactly what's happening. So it has so many positive things in it.
Yeah, and I would think the physical movement and the action of moving that magnet is to him, okay, we're doing this now.
Right.
So it's very clear cut and definitive for him, and not some vague, oh, I'm not finished with this, or
right,
just kind of because that transition from one task to another is very difficult for him.
Right. So for him to be in charge of, like, she'll tell him when it's time, but he's in charge of moving the magnet. That's a big deal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it hasn't happened yet because there hasn't been a school day since this meeting.
Yeah.
But I know that's going to be important to him.
Yeah, knowing him.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Something as simple, so like a 504 versus an IEP, his 504 is going to have access to fidgets during classroom instruction. So something that I really wanted to be careful with when it comes to fidgets is I don't want him distracting other students.
Right.
He doesn't like fidget spinners, but also, my goodness, if someone sitting next to me has a fidget spinner, or like Buddy flipping his pencil when he was in school, it would make me crazy.
Yeah, me too.
So the 504 person for the district, she suggested putting a piece of Velcro under his desk, and not like the kind where there's a piece to stick to the Velcro, just something that he can run his fingers along, something that he can just play with. No other students are going to know it's there because he's just running his finger under his desk.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to see it. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to know it's there.
Who recommended that?
The 504. Her name's Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one from home office.
Okay.
Or from the district. I guess it's not called home office.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives him something to do, some sensory outlet.
Yes.
And it's not going to distract other students.
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
She's also bringing, if she hasn't already brought, it's a band. It's a resistance band. Mm-hmm. So his chair legs now will have a resistance band on them. And Connor's ABA therapist was telling me yesterday that those things are really great because he can put his feet on top of them and he can bounce his feet on them, or he can use it actually for resistance and he can push his legs back against them. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different ways that he can do it, and whatever it is that he needs, it's under his table.
What is that, tied from the front legs, from one front leg to the other front leg?
Yes.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's not going to bother any other students.
Stretchy kind of things like they give you in like therapy.
Yeah, like physical therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least that's how I picture it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean it's I really just wanted to be super, super clear. Like, I don't want any of his accommodations to make him stand out as having accommodations, but I also don't want his accommodations to disrupt other students' education. Mm-hmm. So the things that we're changing are super significant for his world, for his success, mm-hmm. but they are super insignificant to everyone else.
Right.
Like learning.
Right.
I mean, it's significant to their learning because now he's not a distraction.
Sure.
But they might not even know it's there. But these little simple things, the more detailed, the better. So we left the access to fidgets during the classroom instruction vague because as he gets older, maybe those fidgets need to be different. And we do yearly 504 reviews. However, that's one of those things, like, he might get in there and he might hate the Velcro. So why put Velcro as the thing, as long as we're ensuring that he's getting what he needs. Almost all the time, it's important to be specific with the 504, but that's kind of one of those, like, choose your battles. So, but that's just a few of the examples that we have for him. I have a whole bunch of them that we've set up. So I want substitute teachers to know. I want them to have access to his 504 with bullets of, like, the things that they need to know about him.
Yeah, I think that's something, that was one of the ladies' recommendations. I think it was put it right in I guess a substitute will get a folder, I guess, of who's who and what's happening and what have you. And
right.
that 504 is in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really cool.
And that's not something that's normally done, which, I mean, I guess they just kind of see it as this person's only here for a day. Well, yeah, they're only here for a day, except these kids, that one day can be totally thrown off, which means the next day is totally thrown off as well.
Well, the other thing, too, that if a substitute coming in is aware, then them following those guidelines help them to teach that day. It also helps the other students along with Connor.
Right. There's one more thing that I think a lot of people might benefit from hearing. And this is the only thing in the 504 that Mom and I are kind of, it's a watch and wait, or a wait and watch. So we have something in here, additional monitoring during lunch, resource, and transitions. Connor has a hard time with communication. He has a hard time with recognizing what things are sometimes. It's so black and white. She had a really good example. She said that if she's walking and Connor's right on her heels and she forgets something.
This has happened.
Yes, it has happened.
Has happened.
If she turns around and bumps into him, "You hit me!"
Yeah.
No, I didn't hit you. I would never hit you. But for the rest of the day, week, year, life,
yes,
forever. Remember that time you hit me?
Yeah, right. And so it would be like, and this has happened where I'm walking, he's right behind me, I turn around, oh, I forgot, knock, and then immediately, the words that come out of my mouth, oh, I'm sorry, baby.
Right.
I was an accident. I didn't mean to do that. But he...
For the rest of your life. Yeah. Remember that time you hit me? And I say rest of your life. I know he's only 7, but he brings up stuff from when he was tiny.
Like 2.
Yeah.
I mean, just, yes.
Yeah.
He's an elephant.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy. But, okay, so the reason I bring that up is Connor has been coming home since the beginning of this school year. And mind you, we're almost in November. So this is a couple months. At least twice every single week. Comes home and tells me that someone hit him or someone kicked him. And in the past, so last year, he came home with 2 bloody noses. And the circumstances were so unclear because his communication is not there and no one saw it. Mm-hmm. So I've requested that there's absolutely no way that someone can have eyes on him 24/7. However, close proximity means that someone is going to be hanging out in his vicinity. They don't have to interact with him. They don't have to engage with him the entire time or at all. He doesn't even have to know they're there. But I want someone to be around. That way, if these things are happening, is it Gammy turning around and bumping into you, or is he actually getting hit? And either way, that's a really great conversation for us as parents to have with him. Connor, I know that you felt that you got hit, but it was an accident. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that means. Or, my son just got hit. Like, let's talk about that.
Right.
Because I don't want to just, like, come in here and act like my son is this perfect little angel who thinks that I don't want to be controlling of anything. Like, I need to protect my son, but I know that he's a kid, and communication is already a problem with him. So is this really what I'm being told? And I need to know what led up to it, what happened, how the teacher handled it, and how am I going to handle it at home? Not telling them to tell me how to handle it at home, but that tells me, that the situation tells me how to handle it.
But that's another piece of it as well, that the school is going to start sending you information home in a folder.
Yes.
For you to communicate what's happened, and then you can follow through on that. Because he's not able to take, and Josh had this situation growing up, and it's still an issue. He has a very difficult time taking the information in one situation and relaying that information later.
Right.
It's just hard to bring up.
Right.
And so it's very helpful for you to get that information from the school, so that you know you can have conversations with Connor. You can help him through something. You can help him to verbalize what it is that he thinks happened, or whatever he went through.
Right. Something that I told them was, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but not where I'm going with this. It doesn't matter if it was an accident or on purpose, in the sense of what he thinks.
Right.
Because if he thinks it was always on purpose, that's his truth. That's what he believes. And if we don't do something about this, and we don't make this connection and stop this now and have these conversations now, do you think he's going to like school?
Yeah, right.
Or do you think that he's going to be miserable every single day because he thinks that people hit him all the time? That's his truth. So we have to work with him and get him to figure out a way to change that truth and make him realize, oh, I bump into people sometimes. I didn't mean to do that. Well, there are times when other people may bump into me and they didn't mean to hurt me. So that's probably going to be the hardest thing. But that's written, that communication in here, it says parent notification of events involving Connor and other students that involve physical altercations and other behavior instances. This notification should include a description of the event to allow for the family to debrief with Connor. I put it in the 504 because I need this done, period. If you have something, I mean, it's every 504 is different because they're tailored to your child. But if you have something that you know is going to benefit your child, explain why. And if you have a good team, they'll put it in there. And if you don't, get help.
Yes, because what I've found is that when you come across the professionals that know their stuff, it's just so it's a huge turning point.
Yeah.
And because I learned a lot on how to help Josh get through situations from the people back when he was a little guy.
Mm-hmm.
And on the during the 504 meeting the other day, I recognized instantly that I didn't remember the names of but they were, because they were both ladies with long blonde hair. I can't remember. Anyway, they were very in tune with, like, you didn't have to explain what autism is to them.
No.
You didn't have to explain what ADHD is to them.
Right.
They understood it. They came from a point of already having this information.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly have already worked with this information
Right. Yeah.
in their careers. And so they had suggestions that I didn't even think about.
Yeah, I love that. They brought things up. They made suggestions. They put things in the 504 that I didn't ask for, because they knew that it would be helpful.
And it is one of the worst feelings to realize that the people that are with your child for a big chunk of the day don't care about him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a relief to know that the people that are around him care about him.
I had so much anxiety before this 504 meeting, and I didn't realize how much anxiety I had until the meeting was over and I felt hollow. And I was exhausted and thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like, it was the weirdest sensation because I had, like, poured so much energy into trying to make sure that my son got what he needed and what he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not planning on starting a fight, but if it did not go well, you can bet there will be one.
It's going to be a rumble.
Because I have my biggest job is to protect my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just, I'm so relieved.
and what the difference is, that when we talked about this in the very beginning, is that sometimes as a parent, you find yourself in a situation, especially, because we're talking about autism.
Right.
So when it comes to having a child with autism, it comes to having a child with ADHD, you've got to have a relationship with those people in the school.
Yeah.
You have to, in order for things to be okay. Mm-hmm. And what you were so stressed about is that everything, because I've been on those meetings with you, because they still do them through computer.
Right.
So, yeah. So we've been, the only thing that's ever been in person now is like open house now, and then back to school night.
Yeah.
Those two things. Anyway, everything else is through the computer. And I saw you express yourself, and the old guidance counselor rolled her eyes at you.
Oh my! I wanted to jump through the computer at her.
Yeah. And you would bring something up, and they would talk it away.
Or argue with me.
Argue, flat out.
Tell me I'm
argue with
wrong.
you. Yes. Yes, we don't see any of that. There's no need for that. He's doing just fine here. He's never, instead of hearing what you're saying.
They made me cry on one of them.
Yeah, because they would not hear you.
Yeah.
And I know what that feels like. Yeah. I know what it feels like to have your child have in the midst of having such a hard time getting through something, and you're trying to express this, and there's nobody there to hear it.
Yep.
And therefore, there's nobody there to help him.
Right.
And then you feel alone in it, and you feel anxious. You're heartbroken.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing. I'm so proud of you because we're using terms of like fighting. Well, you're not gonna. We don't recommend and advocate, punching someone.
Oh no.
But you didn't stop. As uncomfortable as it was, and as so incredibly stressful as it was, you kept at it and kept at it. Now I want to say this: when you went to this 504 meeting, there's two pieces that were very, very effective. One is, yes, the whole entire team was different. They were a team they were just from the very first words receptive,
Right,
to what you were saying and to doing the very best that they could for Connor.
right.
So that's huge. The other thing is you went in with a list of the things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So for other parents that are going into a 504, talk to the other professionals, the advocates, or the ABA therapists, or whatever it is that you have in your life, and get the questions down, get the statements down, get the issues that you want to address.
Mm-hmm.
Make those bullet points. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. And you did that. You were in charge of the meeting. They were wanting you to share with them what it is that, as his mom, because you know him so better than anyone, I'm close second.
Yeah.
Yes. So you would tell them who he is, how he is, what you see of him, and how he
Right.
processes what he, and then what should happen is what happened, is that these are professionals. They have a background in this. They give you feedback that's positive, and they change the 504 to make sense.
Right.
Because a generic 504, what's the purpose?
Well, first of all, it's so vague that some of the things like that could literally mean anything, and they can say that they're doing it
Yes.
because they can make it sound like whatever they want if it were to get to that point. But second, they weren't adhering to it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The only couple things that like I knew what they meant, I couldn't argue because it was so vague.
Mm-hmm. So 2 points: when people do a 504, as they're advocating for their child, or the person that they're caretaking, on behalf of, specific as possible, in the 504, and then they have to follow through. They have to implement that.
Right.
They have to be doing what the 504 says. And if it's not, I'm just repeating this because I think it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
If it's vague, it doesn't help anyone, because they can do nothing and still they can say, well, they did it because it's so vague. You can't disprove that.
Right.
But if something is very specific, and the reason for that too is specifics help kiddos with autism.
Right.
It just
Yep.
does.
Yep.
And the reason it helps them is because they're individuals. These are little humans that need support, and in a little bit of a different way. And I've said this from, the time I was given Josh to get through this lifetime with. You just don't, you can't let up. You just keep going and trying to get them, like you're doing it for Connor, I did it for Josh. You just keep trying to get them to the next step.
Right.
To the next step, and to the next step. And it can be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because you don't think like Connor.
No. No, I don't understand his brain at all.
But welcome to the club.
But I mean, I understand his heart, and
yes.
that helps me to get him what he needs, because I don't understand why he's doing things the way that he is, but I can ask him questions and I can figure out those answers if you ask the right questions. And that's just it. Like, that's something. So after this 504 meeting, we had this parent-teacher conference after school let out. And something that was brought up, apparently at the school, they have like this charm or this bell or something that goes off. And whenever it goes off, all the kids are supposed to put their hands on their head and look at the teacher. Mm. And his teacher told me that half of the time this bell goes off, or charm or whatever, he doesn't do it. And she's like, I really need you to help me with this, because we have to get all of the kids to look at me, eyes on me, and he won't look up. He absolutely will not look up. I said, okay, so first of all, this is 100% autism. I was like, this is so characteristic. I bet you anything that he hears the charm, he hears the bell, but he's not. It's like, it's way over, you can't see my hands, but it's like way over there. Mm-hmm. He hears it, but he's not processing it. I said, I know that it adds 10 steps for you, like physical steps to walk over to him, but walk over and pat him on his back or his shoulder. He doesn't hear it. He hears it, but he doesn't hear it. He doesn't process it. Mm-hmm. He probably has no clue that it's happening. Mm-hmm. And he's not trying to be disrespectful. I can 99% promise you. And I said, once you get to know him better, you're going to be able to clear as day see when he's being defiant and being a 7-year-old boy who is just being a little stinker, versus when he truly just doesn't know that it's happening. Mm-hmm. And that's what will come with getting to know him.
Mm-hmm. And a suggestion that I have for that scenario, because I can hear Josh in my ear, make it a rule. Make it a rule.
Okay.
And see, who could be the first to put their hands on their head.
Right.
It's got to be, if it's the rule, then that's how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's distant and he's separate from it now, when it becomes a rule, then that's something that will matter to him.
Okay. I'll have a conversation with him about that today. Mm-hmm. And I'll let his teacher know too.
Mm-hmm. And if it can be, how fast, when you hear this, how fast can your hands go on your head?
Okay. He's here. You want to talk to him with me?
Yeah. I will.
Okay.
I will.
So there's one last thing I want to say. I know it's been a long podcast, but there's one last thing I want to say, and I'll make it quick. If you are having a hard time writing your notes to bring to your 504, coming up with the things that you want to put in there, I know this is like such a generic thing to say. Google it. Mm-hmm. So many people have done this that whenever I was creating my list, the things that I knew were going to be beneficial to him, I used my resources. I got some stuff from the neurologist. I got some stuff from his ABA therapist. I got stuff from Mom because she's been here, done that. But I went to Google and I looked up examples of 504 accommodations for autism and examples of 504 accommodations for ADHD. And I went through it, and some of the stuff just doesn't make sense to Connor, but it might make sense for your kid. But just look it up and see, okay, I think that this will be very, very, very helpful. And write it down and bring it up. And if you have a good team, they're going to help you to get it in there the way that you need it to be. And if you don't have a good team, then your advocate will help you. But I really hope that all of you guys have good teams and have people who are receptive. But if you don't, then advocates are there for a reason. And use your resources. Truly. It does not have to be a battle. It's hard enough having kids. It's hard enough. And having to make accommodations and having to go these extra steps and having to take time out of your day constantly to follow through with these things, it's exhausting. I know, you experience this. And if you're just starting to walk this journey, then you're going to experience it. But there's a family and there's resources, and if you know, you know.
Yeah.
So use your resources. Truly, truly, truly. There's help. It's different than when Buddy was a kid. It's different than when Buddy was 7. And these days, you can get the help you need. You just need to know where to look. So I hope that we helped you to figure out where to look and gave you some good ideas for your little one's 504. And I'm glad that you were able to hear about our success.
Aw. Bug, thanks so much. I love you so much. You did a great job. I'm like beaming.
Oh.
You were amazing. You were amazing in that you were on it.
I love you too.
Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Let us know if you have any questions about what we talked about today. You can email me, Sonya at sonyaking.com. You can go to the website too. It's Sonya King, SonyaKing. And sonyaking.com. Go there, send us messages if you want. Wherever you listen to us, if you'd give us 5 stars, that helps us out a lot, because it people find us easier that way. So we appreciate that. And just hope that you're having a wonderful day, and that you're happy and healthy, and that we're sending you hugs. So I hope you feel them. Love you.
Thanks.